Okay, so before I start sharing my screen, um, I just wanted to preface this by saying I have bronchitis. So if I go for water or cough a little, I'm sorry, but that's the reason. So I chose to focus on kind of empowerment or women empowering, um, like their identities around them. So influential women redefining identities. To start, we have Gloria Anzaldúa. So Gloria was a queer Chicana poet and feminist. Specifically, she targeted the anger that emerges from marginalization in social and cultural structures. So she herself was a victim of this marginalization, as she was a daughter of the Spanish American or of a Spanish American and a Native American parent. And as a result of her experience working on several ranches throughout the border of Texas and Mexico, she had the courage to raise awareness of the social justice issues that were prevalent in that area. And while fighting this discrimination surrounding her, she graduated from UT, University of Texas, and soon after taught a course called La Mujer Chicana, which she credits as being like the kind of turning point in her connection with the queer community. So this is a little video. So Borderlands La Frontera is a work regarded as one of the most foundational works in Chicana feminist history. So Anzaldúa, she brings a personal account of her time between the borders, like in quotes, and both physically and emotionally. Then she also harps on that the borders to be taken as a metaphor. In her case, it was both physically and a metaphor, but it's speaking as a metaphor, one between like the consciousness that is constantly being changed, and that she's a woman of color, she's gay, and she shows her great determination, defined by the borderland by saying, a borderland is a vague and undetermined place created by the emotional residue or residue of an unnatural boundary. So she her work propels the gender and borderland studies, shining light on the foundations of conquest and social power in those borderland regions specifically. And these people have a much more broad range of experience than they're accredited to. They're usually identified just based off of their geographical location. So here's a little video.
Means you are neither Hispana, India. To live in the borderlands means you are neither Hispana, India, Negra, Española, ni Gabacha. Eres mestiza, mulata, half-breed, caught in the crossfire between camps while carrying all 5 races on your back, not knowing which side to turn to, run from.
Right here,
to live in the borderlands
kind of
means knowing that the India inside you, betrayed for 500 years, is no longer speaking to you.
Like
the Mexicanas call you rajetas. That denying the Anglo inside you is as bad as having denied the Indian or Black.
And how people tend to
Cuando vives en la frontera,
try to like cope with their new societies, like norms, versus accepting their past and being proud of where they're truly from and their native land.
Through you, the wind steals your voice. You're a burra, buey, scapegoat, forerunner of a new race. Half and half, both woman and man, neither, a new gender. To live in the borderlands means to put chile in the borscht, eat whole wheat tortillas, speak Tex-Mex with a Brooklyn accent, be stopped by La Migra at the border checkpoints. Living in the borderlands means you fight hard to resist the gold elixir beckoning from the bottle, the pull of the gun barrel, the rope crushing the hollow of your throat. In the borderlands, you are the battleground where enemies are kin to each other. You are at home, a stranger. The border disputes have been settled. The volleys of shots have scattered the truce. You are wounded, lost in action, dead, fighting back.
So this is like a little bit of excerpt. I'm living in the borderlands from Borderlands La Frontera. And so
To live in the borderland.
she's easily oh, sorry. I guess it's hard to skip. Okay, so that's Anzaldua, just tying in how important it is to stay true to yourself and identify yourself rather than allow others to identify you. And this kind of ties into the next slide where she works to unite language. So her writing brings English and Spanish together as a united language. This is due to the fact of her theory of these borderlands identities, and all of her works harp on the connection between language and identity. It highlights a concern with those that give up their native language and all of their native practices just to fit in with their new, in this case, like American English society. So personal interest in Anzaldúa, although I may not consider myself a product of the borderland geographically, I'm from New Jersey, born and raised. So the theory that she introduces a previously like kind of uncharted topic. These border residents were born into their social identities without a chance to define themselves. And she is able to show that through history filled with violence that presents its own opportunities. And although hidden, the people's identities are real, they're vibrant, they're unique, and we're able to define them on their, or these people are able to define them on their own terms once they persevered through this adversity. And everyone has that God-given right to define themselves. Everyone fights their own demons and stereotypes, and I have to fought my own battles with others trying to define me. So when someone is strong enough to stand up and speak out, I always find it intriguing on where their passion comes from, and it's always going to be a cause to support. So next would be an artist's stake in gender when we talk about Ana Mendieta. So she was a young lady who was separated from her Cuban family, who would then become an adopted refugee in America, and shared a common theme in that she felt like an outsider in the Midwest growing up. Her artwork reflected her understandings that we're all one with humanity and that the earth is all of our mothers. So this philosophy was driven by her urge to eliminate the injustices referring to gender, race, and like the others, geography. So her photograph of the naked woman covered in mud in the Silueta series against the tree can be perceived in several different ways. However, she looks to the viewer to understand her purpose first. So we are all people of Earth, no matter our skin color, gender, or geographical location. And similarly to Gloria, the aspects of identity are extremely complicated. Mendieta's work utilized the bare minimum within them, which creates a sense of both presence and absence, suggesting that people lose touch with their sacred traditions and nativity to become false members in their newly formed society. So here's a personal connection to Mendieta's work. So all of her works are extremely creative, hiding several meanings within each of them. And that being said, it's easy for a viewer to attach their own meaning to the work. So when you attach your own meaning, it allows creativity and freedom to work aside from the messy definition of identity. Her creativity is inspiring, driving home the idea of the necessity to stay true to your roots. Everyone needs self-pride, and proudness of uniqueness is paramount in maintaining a society that's filled with innovation. And Elaine Scarry writes, to have pain is to have certainty. So when you're feeling the pain and backlash, that's just supposed to be support in that you're making the necessary sacrifice and decision. So now we have Rosaria Ferre. So while women during this time period were very inspirational in trying to point out the importance of being true to themselves, it was not easy to grab a platform to display their views on. So there was a massive difference in male versus female support. In fact, many people believe that men were the superior gender. This is extremely suppressing and false, clearly, and some of the repercussions are still being felt today. Rosaria Ferre, unlike the previous woman, grew up in a very affluent Puerto Rican family. She quickly became one of the most prolific female writers to represent her home country and a very strong feminist voice in the 21st century. She wrote a story, The Youngest Doll, to highlight sexism, racism, and class implications during this time. And the same treatments during this time were not available to certain classes and even genders. And the young woman in the story suffers from a river prawn bite. And upon being examined by an older male doctor who was white, was told that this simple bite, as time would pass, the wound would heal. It was nothing to worry about. So she wrote in the story, the doctor who examined her assured her it was nothing, that she had probably been bitten by an angry river prawn, but days passed and the scab would not heal, said the doctor. However, the doctor knew that there was an antidote that would help, and after going untreated, the woman would suffer greatly. So as the story progresses beyond that point, the aunt living in pain with the prawns are still attached, and long after the incident, the doctor came for his monthly visit along with his son, who has been studying medicine. When the son looked over, the wound would heal. Or when the son looked over, he said to the father, you could have cured this from the start. To which the father replied, that's true, but I just wanted you to come and see the prawn that has been paying for your education for these past 20 years. This brief conversation shines light on the underlying identity that men felt way more powerful and would withhold information and even treatment from those in a different class or gender. Sickening, disheartening, truthful. Ferre's literature was a blunt example of the discrimination that women had to face throughout their daily life. Ferre's passion and dedication to spreading the injustices highlight the strength that women need to simply get their voice heard. So if we skip down to present day, there's 4 major gender biases. Education. So present day bias creates learning inequality in the classroom and sets limits on future potential. And according to a study followed out by the Global Gender Gap Report in 2020, men attend primary school much more often because of this bias proposed. There's pay gap issues. Women still only make roughly 84% of what men of the same occupation make, according to the Pew Research Center. For sexual violence, according to a study committed by Cal Poly Humboldt, an estimated 91% of victims of rape and sexual assault are female, and only 9% are male. And healthcare costs. According to lawinfo.com, women have increased healthcare costs, unequal gender representation, and a lack of information between doctors and patients, standard care, and even belief bias when being treated for illnesses. So that is how influential women are redefining their identities throughout this time when women were not being looked upon with remotely the same attention that men were.